Ok, chicos, estamos en vivo. This is a Spanish group, so I'm gonna start with Spanish, Dylan.
I like it.
Estamos aquí con Dylan, increíble fotógrafo, pero no solo eso, es un increíble maestro. En los últimos años estuvo manejando un grupo de SEO para fotógrafos específicamente, entonces vamos a hablar un poco de eso. La entrevista va a ser en inglés. Así que antes de empezar, chicos, por favor, compartan el video y comenten y den un like para ver si todo está bien. Y empezamos. So, Dylan, thank you so much for your time. I know you're a very busy person, and investing a little bit of your time here, it really helped the community. So, first of all, I want to thank you for that. So, how have you been, Dylan? Introduce yourself a little bit to the community. Most people will know you, though.
Yeah, totally. So I'm a photographer in Portland, Oregon, and I also teach search engine optimization for photographers. Yeah, and I specialize
in. How have you been during this COVID-19 pandemic?
Totally, it's been interesting. Luckily, where I live and my business is structured where I shoot at least half of my weddings are elopements and small weddings. Mm-hmm. And so I've been it's been an easy transition to really pushing that side of the business forward because those shoots are actually somewhat doable during these times. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's been fine.
So before we start, Dylan, can you say out where we can find you, your SEO group or the website people can go to before?
Totally. So for the SEO, there's a website called fuelyourphotos.com, and there's a Facebook group called Fuel Your Photos, and we also have a Facebook group called SEO for Photographers. Both of those we post, and people can ask questions, and we try to answer them as quickly and promptly as possible.
Yeah, so those groups are in Facebook, right?
Yes. Yep.
Perfect. So we're going to do a little bit of update COVID here.
Thanks.
So how has your, wedding business been affected through this, COVID-19?
Totally. So when everything started hitting...
Hello?
Yep. Are you still there?
Hello. Se desconectó.
Oh no. Let's see. Can you hear me? No? Or yes?
Yes. It got cut off a little bit, but I'm still here. Yes, I can hear you.
Cool. So when COVID hit, the first half of my wedding season pretty much instantly rescheduled. They were either pushed until like October, November, or later in the summer, or some of them went to 2021. And I think in the last month, the rest of my weddings have all scheduled to 2021 for the most part. All of my full-size weddings have, but a handful of my just the couple and an officiant, or up to maybe 5 or so people, those elopements are still good to go. It's legal to shoot those where I live.
So most weddings have been postponed to 2021. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So how is the process? What was the usual process? Couple will, they'll contact you and say, "Oh, we're gonna postpone." And did they just choose any day? Did you charge any fee or rebooking fee, or was it just kind of just change the day, no problem?
Yeah, I thought that this was kind of a weird circumstance where I didn't feel really comfortable charging a rebooking fee. I know others do, and I'm totally cool with that. But I gave them my open dates and said, "Hey, if you can make this work, great." And every couple so far has been able to do that, except for one, I believe. And then if they aren't able to make that date work, I still kept the retainer. But we'll see. I even feel kind of bad about that. And so we'll see if I might just return it, because I didn't do anything for their wedding. And I feel like this was a really incredible world event. So.
Yes. So this is a very, typical event. So a lot of photographers are, sometimes when this first happened, we're like, what do we do? Is this something that we go by our contract, or do we kind of be more open and lenient to it, right? So do you have any issues with couples trying to book a date that you're not available, or how do you solve that issue if they want to change to a date you're not available?
So far I haven't had issues. I've been lucky, and a lot of them are being flexible because they're downsizing their weddings, and so they're able to do it on weekdays, and they also understand that this is a really special circumstance, and so if I'm not available on the Saturday they want, they either pick a different one or they go on a Sunday or a weekday, and so far it's worked out. So I've been lucky.
Okay. And how are you investing your time right now? What have you been doing lately?
Totally. So I've been working really hard on the SEO education side, and I'm still doing that. And then on my personal business, I've redesigned my website once, and then I'm working on a new website right now to launch, and so I've been like putting effort into that. I've been working on other side projects and like just different things to invest and like take my time that I normally am short on time, and now I'm able to be like, okay, today I'm going to work on my 3 different side projects, and like it's been good.
Just out of curiosity, is wedding photography your main source of income?
Yeah, it's probably, I actually haven't looked at the ratio this year. Up until this year, it definitely was. With the SEO education, it's probably half and half.
Okay.
The education might be starting to pull ahead.
Okay.
My original plan, like last year or so, was to shoot maybe 10 weddings a year and primarily do the SEO education.
Okay.
And that kind of changed. Like the education's great, but I'm still shooting 20 weddings, so I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Okay. So, but is your future plan to move more towards the educational part than stay on wedding photography?
It's hard. I tell myself that I want to do that, but then I miss weddings, or like I'll get an email and they're like, "Hey, we really want you to come shoot this wedding in Big Sur," and I'm like, gosh, I really want to do that. Yeah, for sure. And I honestly,
when the money is there, it's hard to,
Yeah, I mean, the money is great in wedding photography, and I think I honestly, what I don't miss like shooting 40 or 50 weddings a year at all. Like that, it's like when you don't have a weekend where you can hang out with friends or family or do anything special the entire summer, I don't miss that. But I do think that shooting between 10 and 20 weddings, I'll probably continue doing for the next 5+ years. I genuinely like it. So,
yeah. So now even with your SEO strategy, probably you're getting more increase, right? You're trying to do less weddings, but you have to apply all your SEO strategy on your website to test it out, and then you get more increase. And
that's exactly what happened. Like there were posts that I made on my site specifically for either tests or like examples in our course, and I'm getting inquiries from them, and I'm like giving them to friends. I'm giving them to my partner Jess, and I'm just like. But then I'm like, these are good. I'm going to take some. Yeah.
Completely understand. A little bit about shifting. We want to talk about 2 topics today, which is elopements and then the SEO part. So first of all, you position yourself as elopement photographer.
Yeah.
Right. My first question was, how do you position as elopement when, first of all, a lot of photographers will be thinking, how can I make a sustainable business out of elopement wedding photography? Because a lot of couples, or maybe the general feeling is that elopements, you have to charge a little bit less than weddings. So first of all, I want to know your definition of elopement. What is an elopement? Is it like how many people, or what does it imply? Because elopement nowadays are used kind of for mini weddings or 20 people, 10 people. So what I want to take your take.
So I don't have like a set number. I don't even think I have a set number in my contract. But when I'm talking with couples, I'm like, hey, like obviously you two, and if you have like 2 friends, or if both of your parents come or something like that, I don't care. But as soon as it's like 10, 20, 30 people, not an elopement anymore. And I really I do that for a few reasons. Most of the spots we go to, you don't have to get a permit for small elopements. Like the park
Okay.
rangers, like just go for it. If it's just 2-3 people and you don't have chairs or anything like that,
Mm-hmm.
you can go for it, and that's awesome. But if you're bringing in 20 people, you're kind of not able to do that. So you have to get permits, and it changes it, and it's just more stress. And
Uh-huh.
the biggest thing I like about elopements for me is that there's less stress for me. There's less stress for the couple. They're not worried about when are their guests arriving and flowers and all this like craziness. It's just they're concentrating on what's really important. So,
Uh-huh.
um,
So that being said,
yeah,
I mean, elopement might be a simpler. um it might be simpler to photograph an elopement because there's not so much things going on,
yeah,
and that goes related, that in relation to price. How do you price an elopement then?
yeah,
Because if they say, oh, we're not gonna be there's gonna be chair, no altar, no anything, it's gonna be us. I mean, uh,
totally.
how?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I have two different packages. I have a 5-hour package and a full day, and they're fairly high. Like I could probably raise them, but I'm just, at least like right now, I'm just like, I don't need to raise my prices in the middle of a global pandemic. Like,
Uh-huh.
um, but yeah, so it's like I think mine are 3,200 for the 5 hours and 4,200 for the full day package. And I made
Uh-huh.
that,
Do
yeah,
Mhm.
I made that jump pretty small because I wanted to
Mhm.
really just push people to do full day. Um, and that's
Okay.
roughly the same price as my 8-hour full wedding package. So
Okay.
um, it's a little, they're getting a little bit of a deal, and for me, it's definitely less stress. Uh,
But how do you like? I mean, what do you do with a full day elopement? If their
yeah,
sermon's gonna be 5 minutes, how do
totally.
you fill that 8 hour, documentary shooting?
For sure. So it allows us to do a few things. They can get up at sunrise and they can do either special events, like a little morning hike or whatever. I've even done where they like just read vows to each other or something early in the morning. And that's really beautiful. And then they can come back, they can hang out with family, they can get ready, can document that, which I think is really important. And then go do the ceremony. And then it gives us time to just not be stressed about time and timelines. And I've been on shorter elopement days where we do the ceremony and then we're like jumping in a car and we're trying to get to a portrait location that's like 45 minutes away, and then do a little hike and get to the spot. And then we're like, we have to get back to sunset at this other spot. So we're jumping back in the car, and it gets rid of that stress. So we can
Okay.
really maximize the sunrise and the sunset light. But, but usually we like chill in between and like just get some food,
Okay.
hang
So
out. Yeah.
most okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So most of their elopement time is actually kind of moving from different spots. The hiking spot, like moving, driving an hour or 45 minutes away to another spot,
Yeah.
stuff like that. It's
It
not
definitely,
actual documenting.
yeah, it definitely can be. Especially like around Portland, there's some great areas and locations, and if we're in Portland, it allows us to shoot at a waterfall in the morning or something, and then we could even gone out to the coast at night, and that's like an hour away. So
Uh-huh.
it makes it for a beautiful coverage and beautiful day.
Okay. So it is actually a little bit more work
I mean,
because you do
yeah,
have to be,
totally,
I
yeah,
was imagine but what happens if elopement is at one spot? Say, oh, I just want to go right here
yeah,
next door to the forest and do an elopement.
totally. So then I just
How
do
do you
yeah, we just do the 5-hour package, and sometimes I only shoot for 2 hours or 3 hours, and they're not like, hey, like I want you to shoot me for 5 hours today. So,
okay.
but yeah, and I think that's pretty much it. I forgot I was going to say
How
something
how
else.
do you
Yeah.
yeah how do you I mean, if the difference between elopement and wedding is very little on your
Mhm.
pricing,
Yeah.
do you have people reacting to like, oh, why is your elopement price so high? Or
Yeah.
you know if the difference is so,
Yeah.
the
So
pricing between weddings and elopement is very close.
totally. So for years when I was doing elopements, I had my elopements much cheaper. And it wasn't until I think I was doing Maddie May's elopement course or something like that, or some of her education, where I realized that you can really like these are big life experiences, and you're really doing a lot of work on the planning side and on the day and everything. So you can charge, and the clients value it. I've actually been surprised at the lack of pushback.
Okay.
I used to be $1,500 for an elopement. So I like doubled to tripled it. And yeah, I feel like I got more pushback when it was 1,500 because it was kind of targeting a different market a little bit.
Because you push the whole day experience instead of just like, oh, this is going to be a photo shoot on the,
yeah, it used to be like 2 to 3 hours or something. Yeah.
Okay. So what's the typical process? So say I contact you, hey, Dylan, I want to do an elopement in Yosemite.
Yeah.
Do most couples come to you first as, the photographer, and then you help them plan out? Or do you work with the small team that, there's a little bit of planning, things like that?
Yeah, it depends. For places like Yosemite and Big Sur and more destination, typically they need quite a bit of help. So they'll come to me typically first, and then they're asking like, hey, where are your favorite spots? Where should we stay? Do you know any officiants? Do you know any florists? Do you know any makeup artists? So I kind of just help get them to those connections that I've worked with in the past. They might ask about permits, and I can fill them in on the information that I do know from working there in the past. And so I try to just be as helpful as possible on that end. For all of the Western US, I include travel in my pricing. So they don't have to like worry about which airport are you flying into and what time and when do we pay for that and all that stuff. So I take care of all of my end. And then I also help them with timeline, because the timeline, I think, for elopements is so important to get the level of photo that they expect from my portfolio. And I just explain that to them that, hey, like if you're in Big Sur at 2 p.m., it's going to be pretty, but it's not going to look the same as these photos that you want on this cliff at sunset. Like, so I really tell them like, hey, like it might make for a little bit later reception, but it's going to be gorgeous. And I've done this a lot. And so you want to be at these places at certain times.
So you do have a little bit of role of planning, the wedding planner. You do have to work out the logistics, and which is one of the reasons why you can charge more, right? It's part of like a totally different So we're gonna move on to the next topic, which is SEO. I think a lot of people are curious about this, especially nowadays. The wedding photographers, they're just sitting home and starting to work on their website.
For sure.
So first of all, SEO. Okay, so I have a website. I don't know anything about SEO.
Totally.
Where do I start? What do I read? What do I have to know?
Yeah, totally. So it's there's slight differences depending where you're coming from, but in general, maybe a good starting spot would be the Moz, which is MOZ, Beginner's Guide to SEO, and that's just it's going to tell you like basics of like definitions of terms and like what SEO is and stuff like that, and it's fairly up to date and I think fairly easy to digest. But once you've done that, I think it kind of goes to a marketing perspective where you need to look at like what is your main offering, who's your target market, and what goals do you have? Like, are you an elopement photographer, a wedding photographer? Are you trying to do like maternity and family portraits and newborns, or like are you just doing senior portraits? Like, you need to figure out exactly what your offering is and figure out if you want to have like a broad offering or really specialize in one specialty. And that's just like kind of general marketing, but it's really important to SEO.
Yes, because the only SEO we learn from photography workshop is rename your photos and make hyperlink with them. Everybody was a destination wedding photographer. That's the only thing that they were touching until someone like you comes in and then goes a little bit deeper.
Yeah, for sure.
But at the same time, it's very hard to digest.
Yeah, for sure.
So my question: How does SEO influence in your business today? Like your experience with other wedding photographers, I mean, compared to other platforms like social media and all that, why is the SEO so important?
Yeah, for me, I don't like posting on social media as much. So like, I rarely post on Instagram. Other
Mm-hmm.
photographers might be Instagramming every day or on Pinterest every day. That's cool. And I don't think that that's any less valid. I just really prefer to spend my time. I might spend maybe a week, maybe like a few hours a day creating a blog post about how to elope in Big Sur, which is one of my favorite
Okay.
markets.
Okay.
And I can post that and maybe update it a little bit here and there. But once it starts ranking, it's bringing me inquiries like on a weekly basis for years.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
like I've had inquiries from Big Sur and Yosemite and some of the other places that I've targeted consistently for multiple years, even if I'm not posting to Instagram or Pinterest or
Yeah.
anything like that. So,
Okay. One thing is, I don't know if you heard this.
mhm.
I think when I used to go to the photography workshops in the early days, they were telling us, you don't want to get those couples that search on Google. You want to find them couples that are
Interesting.
cool, that are on Instagram,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So they demonize a lot of the Google couples.
totally. Yeah,
But
I think it
nowadays, I think,
depends.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Like, I think that goes also to like what kind of search are they performing to find you? Because there are search terms that are going to maybe bring you more like budget brides or something like that that you may or may not want.
Mhm. Okay.
And so I don't really necessarily target cheap wedding photographer in Portland or something like that. I don't need to show up for that. But you can target venues that
Mm,
the wedding is like they're going to spend
more higher end.
$100,000 or
Mhm,
$500,000 every wedding there. So you know that
mhm.
you can actually make some decent money on the photography end. Um, so it's all about what you target.
Uh-huh. So it does require, like you said, a little bit of marketing research of where are the
Yeah,
venues that are good, or what are the
for
places
sure.
that people get married and stuff like
Totally.
that, right?
Yeah,
So,
completely.
so one thing is about the social media, piggybacking on that topic is, a lot of people might say SEO is so hard,
Mhm.
it takes a lot of work.
Yeah,
Why can't I just, be on social media and just, push and buy advertising on Facebook,
yeah,
Why do I need SEO? What would you
yeah,
say to those
totally.
people?
Well, I think that I think that it's all a mix, and you should have a well-rounded marketing mix. Like, if I was really trying to be the best photographer business possible, I would be doing more social media than I am. I would be
Uh-huh.
doing paid ads, and I'm not currently.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I would have like a bedrock of SEO where I know that I'm
Mm-hmm.
getting 100 or 200 people to my site from Google every day, no matter what. And then if I
Mm-hmm.
post a blog post on Instagram, I
Mm-hmm.
might get an extra 200 people that day. Um, and so you can use those, and
Mm-hmm.
you can also like build audiences through people that come to you via SEO, and then you can target them with ads, and that raises the effectiveness of your ads that you're buying. Like it all helps each other. Um, but in general, for
Uh-huh.
me, I have limited time, and I
Okay.
I was also like mentally stressed out by social media. Like I feel like it wasn't healthy for my mind space.
Yeah.
And so if every morning, because for a long time I would wake up every morning, the first thing I did was open Instagram, and I would
Uh-huh.
see all of my friends and my peers posting amazing work, and I'd just be like jealous. Even if if I was doing great work myself, whatever, I would still be like, oh, they're in New York doing this cool wedding, and I'm just sitting here in Portland doing nothing today. Like,
Uh-huh.
damn. And like I'd compare myself to them, and it was very negative. And
Uh-huh.
so I couldn't do that every day. And I just
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to anymore. So for me, being able to pull back on social media and concentrate more on the SEO end, um, it's more on autopilot for me at this point. But yeah, that's just me.
I like that idea. I like that idea
For sure.
of having that. How can I make SEO then less painful?
Yeah,
How, what can I do to, like, I don't want to, spend so much time learning. Like, what are some tips
totally.
that you can give people?
Yeah. I think that the first tip is to just put yourself in the position of the potential clients. How are they?
Hello.
Oh, did it cut out? How are they searching the internet to plan their wedding? So for me, like one of the strategies that we've seen is really successful for most photographers is to build a guide of local wedding venues, because that's the first thing people typically search for when they're planning a wedding, even before photographers often. And so if you can bring actual useful, beneficial information to those potential clients early on in their booking process, it gives you an opportunity to also wow them with your photography. But it kind of gets them hooked a little bit, where they're like, hey, like you've shot all of these venues in your local town or wherever, this destination, and you have all this like knowledge of the area. Like we'd rather pick you than somebody that just posts pretty photos on Instagram, maybe. So yeah, I think that's where I'd start. It doesn't have to be technical. It doesn't have to be like modifying like code of your template or getting nerdy in the back end to improve your page speed. Like just think about what's useful to people and how they would search for it, and you're going to go a long ways.
Perfect. One question, and this is a question a lot of people have, is can SEO be outsourced? Can I just have someone do it for me?
Totally. So we get this question a lot, and we have briefly in and out offered sort of like services to photographers to do SEO, but we don't get the best results in our experience from just people that are like, hey, I want to give you money each month and I just want to have inquiries flow in and site traffic flow in. What we've learned is that nobody knows like your services and your local market better than you. And so you need to be able to leverage that knowledge. And it takes more time for me to learn like what are brides looking for when they plan a wedding in Baja that I've never been to Baja. Like I would have to do hours of research to figure that out. But for you, it just flows. Like you could sit down and write like, here's the top 10 spots, here's the best florists, like whatever. Like for you, that's easy. Outside of that, also SEO is a huge like overarching topic, and there's a lot of sub parts that can be outsourced. So if you start learning a little bit about SEO and you understand the basics, you can then figure out like, hey, I'm going to take care of the content, but I'm going to hire somebody for a few $100 to make my site fast, or I'm going to hire somebody for a few $100 to build some links to it or something, do some outreach, like little pieces that can like amplify your efforts.
Okay, perfect. What about paying someone to write an article? Like you said, it's probably better for you to write your own because you know the in and outs, right? Is that right?
Best case for sure. Like I think that for most people, it's going to be best if you write your own. But I've had decent results from writers from like low end that are like $5 to $10 for like a 500 to 1,000 word article, up to like really like high end writers that are $60 an hour, and they might spend like 10 plus hours on an article, but it's going to be perfect. So yeah, I mean, I've spent like $600 on a writer for one article before, but that article brings me inquiries all year, like every year after year. So it's like, it's so worth it.
So if you're going to hire someone to write, the quality of the person writing is important.
For sure. It'll save you having to redo their work for sure.
So what are some 3 tips then for beginners? Say like I have a website, what are some easy tips that I can do right now, like implement?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing is to figure out what that main target is for your whole website. For me, it's Portland Wedding Photographer, and make sure that your homepage title has that included. And that's pretty easy. Like everybody kind of figures that out. But to not include that on any other pages of your site in the title or the URL. And that's probably the biggest mistake that we see over and over, where they think that like, okay, I'm a wedding photographer in Portland, I'm going to include that on every blog post or something where it says like the couple's name and then it says Portland Wedding Photographer. that hurts so bad. It's called keyword
Okay.
cannibalization.
Okay.
And we see that all the time. The next tip, like Google is caring about how fast your website loads, especially on mobile more and more these days. So the more you can kind of work on that, the better. It's pretty important. And so our recommendations there are a lightweight like theme, if you can, for your site, or a platform that's decent for page speed. And that's pretty easy to find. Like Showit is actually pretty decent for that. Most WordPress is decent. The next tip, I think that's not terribly difficult, but nobody's doing in the photography world, is YouTube. If you do a quick YouTube video for a venue you've shot at, and it could even be a slideshow of your images, I've seen those rank like the same day you post it on the first page, even if it's a competitive keyword, because nobody's doing it. So I think really leveraging video, especially on YouTube, is a really great way for photographers to get quick wins.
Perfect. So speed,
yeah,
content, and maybe videos.
Yeah,
that's a lot of work, actually. You're giving a lot of.
you have the time right now.
You're giving us a lot of work to do. So, what is your vision for? I want to, kind of close this. And what is your vision for 2020? Do you expect more? Do you have wedding? When is your next wedding? Like next full wedding?
Gosh, my next full wedding. I think I might have one that's still on for October. But they're like, hey, we don't think this is going to happen. Let's look at next year.
Okay.
And so I think my next officially, like, it's booked and ready to go is like next April. So almost a year away.
Okay, so pretty much all your weddings have been postponed to next year.
Yeah.
Right?
And so the elopements are still going. So
okay, so my one question is, how do you plan your business? Because a lot of photographers, their worries, if I book my 2020 couples in 2021, then I won't be able to book a new couple. That means it will affect my business. That's why I need to charge, a fee or whatever. So what is your vision then for 2020? Do you think it's going to be more work? It's going to be like the best year of our lives because there's going to be so much work? Or actually it's going to be more of a catching back up from what we lost 2020, and then 2022 is going to be the good year? What's your take?
Yeah, I think that barring like another crazy wave of coronavirus that is even worse than the first one or something, I think 2021 is going to be a very busy year for photographers. I think that at least the photographers I know, most of their 2020 weddings have booked for the next year. And so you're going to be doing all of those, plus everybody that wants to get married after the pandemic. So it's going to be a lot. And I think that right now you should be taking care of yourself, be ready physically and mentally to work really hard in 2021, because I think you might need to, but also it's going to be just so much opportunity. I think that it's going to be a really big year. I'm hoping so. Do
you plan to take on more weddings next year to to compensate this year?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I'm doing fine this year, but it's hard. It's going to be interesting to see how this changes. I felt that there's like a societal shift on how it makes you appreciate, like, I wouldn't mind having a lot more in savings or something like that. Like next pandemic, I'll be fine. And so part of me wants to go really hard. And I was even thinking, like, I get so many local wedding inquiries, like, should I start a new business and have teams and like do that whole associate thing? And I might. It's a lot of work, but it might be worthwhile, where if somebody books my associate company and I have 6 photographers working for it, I'd be able to actually book out a lot of work. And there's a lot of people looking for jobs, so maybe they want to be a photographer. So
The only hard part will be the management.
Exactly. And
The overhead headache.
Yeah, and I'm not great at like project management of multiple teams, and so I'd have to hire that out. And but so we'll see. It's a thought.
That's interesting because it feels like it can be a really good business model, like passive income, but actually it's like more
So
work
much
because
work.
you have to be on top of everything. You have
Yeah.
to. It's your face that is on the line, so you have to.
Yeah, it's stress.
So right now we're gonna go to open-end questions. Pero, chicos, si tienen algunas preguntas. Si tienen alguna pregunta sobre SEO o enrollments, dejen. Let's see if there was any comments. Hans they say, Green, you should come to Peru. Have you been to Peru?
Never been. I've always wanted to. Yeah, I'd love that.
Maybe next year.
Yeah, the flights are so cheap right now.
Yeah, it's tempting.
Yeah, I've actually been looking. I think they were like $180 round trip. That's like,
it's crazy.
Whoa.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
But I think if there's not any more questions, I think we cover pretty much all the topics, Dylan. Cool. Thank you so much for your time. Hopefully this will help a little bit of the photographers that are getting into the SEO game,
Yeah.
Can you repeat again your group,
Totally.
your Facebook group?
Yeah, it's called Fuel Your Photos. And we love it when you ask questions.
On Facebook. Fuel Your Photos. Okay.
Looks like there's a last question there. Which are the important metrics that we have to look at in analytics? Yeah, so that's a great question. I definitely stay away from caring too much about bounce rate. I think people look at that too much from my perspective. I don't look at time on site that much. I think that's also a pretty flawed metric in Google Analytics. I typically just look at number of sessions, and I want to always be improving that number.
Okay. There's some question here, Dylan.
Yeah.
He's asking if changing hosting affects SEO.
Yeah, definitely. So I've seen some pretty massive increases from moving to a good quality hosting. If you Google Fuel Your Photos hosting for photographers, we have a blog post that has our 3 favorite picks, but they are Cloudways, which is, I have like 25 sites hosted on Cloudways. I really like it. It's $11 a month, which is a good price. Like, it's not too expensive, but you're getting pretty much the fastest hosting you can find and really good support. For a cheaper version, there's SiteGround, but they're like in the $3 to $4 range for your first year per month. But their technical support's getting a little bit, I don't like it as much anymore. And then our favorite high-end hosting is called WPX, and it's like $35 a month. But it's called managed hosting, where they take care of your plugin updates and backups and everything for you, and they'll message you and be like, hey, like, we noticed your site was down and we fixed the problem and stuff like that. And you're like, wow, I didn't even know it was down. And they're really great. So they're an awesome one if you can afford the extra money.
Perfect. How do you deal when we have to do 2 languages in the website? How does that affect SEO?
For sure. So it's, from a technical explanation, there's a tag called hreflang, and that tells search engines that there's an alternate language version of the page. So you might be on the Spanish version, and it says, hey, here's the English version, and it's the same content, just in a different language. It's fairly technical to set up, but if you're on WordPress at least, most of there's plugins that can do it for you. And yeah, I've seen it work pretty well.
Okay, so there is a way to just write in English, and then that plugin will translate for you in Spanish, or do you have to write both contents and then kind of connect?
Yeah, you can do either way. You can do your own translations, which I think generally works better. Like, there's some nuance that I think is often lost. Or you can just let the plugin translate for you, and it might be a little funny sounding, but
okay. Well, what's the name of the plugin?
There's one called, gosh, it's like, let me look it up. 1 second here. Yeah, WPML is the most popular.
Okay, perfect. So there is a way to do that, especially for people that wants to do pages in English and their own language, right?
Yeah.
Perfect. I think those are all the questions, Dylan. Thank you so much for your time.
Of course.
Espero que les han ayudado, chicos. Había muchas preguntas de SEO. Espero que las preguntas que hice a Dylan les hayan ayudado. Para los que van entrando, compartan el video y compartan ahí. Dejen sus comentarios. Si tienen alguna otra pregunta, chicos, dejen ahí. Después contestamos. But I want to thank you, Dylan, for your time. I hope, we get to see each other again soon.
Totally.
With all this over.
Yeah.
So, yes, we'll be singing around and, para las personas, entren al grupo de Dylan, view your photos. So we can find more information there, right?
Awesome.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good day, Dylan.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.